So this is the Mike Gormley Show with a very legendary producer, Val Garay. We just heard the Four Seasons, Oh What a Night. And uh, that was a surprise hit, at least it was to the public, in that the Four Seasons had career had kind of slowed down, at least the recording career.
Well, it was more Frankie Valli solo stuff because I did Swearing to God and My Eyes Adored You. Both of those were Frankie Valli big hit singles. But what they decided to do is they decided to put the Four Seasons back together with new kids.
Yeah.
So that's what that was about. And there was three kids that were new, and one of them was the lead singer, which is the one who's singing the lead on that in the verses, whereas Frankie does the choruses.
Yeah.
And Bob wrote the song. His wife wrote the lyrics.
Oh.
You know, Bob had written a lot of hits for the Four Seasons.
Oh man, yeah.
Both,
All the hits, you might say all the hits are very close to all of them.
pretty much all of them. And, you know, they came up with that idea and we cut it at the Sound Factory and I mixed it at the Sound Factory and they put it out and wham, it was like huge, went to number one. But it also is the core song of the Jersey Boys. If you that show,
Yeah.
became the centerpiece in the play.
Was your recording used, or did they re-record the stuff for that movie?
No, they played it, yeah, they played.
And I always thought it was interesting, just guy listening to the radio, but yes, it's Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, but as you mentioned, you can tell his voice when he comes in.
He's in the chorus. Jerry Polci was the drummer in the other voice.
Yeah.
And it didn't last long because, you know, there was tension, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
having two lead singers and Frankie, you know, is the legend of that band, you know.
Yeah. You couldn't do it without him.
No way. But it was a great record, and I love doing it. You know, and Gaudio is so much fun to work with. You know, and he's just a character, and he just, you know, he just doesn't stop. Neither does Frankie. The two of them. Frankie must be almost 90 years old. I'm actually going to see him in July when we go back east because there's a show in Chautauqua, New York, where we're staying. That he's doing a show there, so I'm going to go see him.
That'll be great. You know, yes, he is in his 90s, and he's got to slow down one of these days, but maybe not. Maybe he'll just keep going.
I don't know. I don't know if age has anything to do with it. I think it's more genetic than anything. And he is another one who won the gene pool. I did too.
I saw them a few years ago here in LA, and he basically just stood there and sang, except at one point, all of a sudden, he and the four guys doing backup vocals took 4 or 5 steps forward, and the crowd went crazy. It was just he just stepped forward. That was all they did. The choreography was easy, but the crowd loved it, just the movement. Because I guess they used to do that. They used to walk up towards, like on Ed Sullivan, they're walking up towards the camera. Anyway, side thing. But that's also a great record. And is there in your mind, this may be rude to ask, is there in your mind, in your career, 5 top records? Do you have a top 5?
Oh boy, that's tough, huh? I mean, probably one of my favorites was "You're No Good" because that was my first #1 record.
With Linda Ronstadt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably my second favorite was "Blue Bayou" with Linda Ronstadt because that became a gold single, which is hard to do. And it was, you know, just a great version of that song by Roy Orbison. My favorite James Taylor one that I did out of all the hits that I did with him, I like "Up on the Roof." I love the song that Goffin and King wrote.
Yeah.
I love the string arrangement that Arif Martin was kind enough to do for us on the track. I think his vocal performance is absolutely as good as anything he ever did.
You're right. Yeah, I agree.
Betty Davis Eyes I love because I won the record of the year and the song of the year, that stuff.
But
And
it's a great record, as we've discussed. So,
still to this day,
yeah.
doing fantastic. I love the Andrew Gold record I did, Lonely Boy. I thought that was
Yeah.
a great autobiographical song, which it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Still the One was another one of my favorites with Orleans.
Yeah, sure.
Only the Lonely with Martha Davis in the Motels was another one of my favorites.
Huge hit.
I just
The list can go on. Well, I said top five, and you've gone to about 10, but that's cool. That's all right. I know there's another 20.
yeah, I mean,
But and it must be difficult to just pick five or whatever it might be out of all of that.
yeah, it's difficult because they're all such great records,
Yeah.
So fortunate.
Was there, no, you started out as an engineer, right?
Started out as a singer and a songwriter. I was signed to Lou Adler and his label. That was the first Ode Records, and I was signed to Columbia Records to Clive Davis.
Oh,
After I got tired of being dependent on four other people for my livelihood, I decided to get into something else and stay in the business.
uh-huh.
Prior to that, before I got in the music business, I was at the Stanford School of Medicine studying to become a doctor, and I was in my second year of graduate school, and a friend of mine in San Francisco I went to school with started a band and asked me if I wanted to be part of it, and
Wait, you went all the way to graduate school and before you moved on to music?
I did.
That's a heavy period of time in studying. Is that ever come in handy, the medical background?
Well, I mean, in terms of your health, in terms of your life, you're your own advocate. So having that kind of knowledge is helpful in that way, I mean, because
Yeah.
as you're older, you have all kinds of garbage you have to deal with, It's like Betty Davis said, getting old ain't for sissies.
So what was the first time in the studio? If you're going from a student to actually being in the studio, how did that come about?
When I moved to Hollywood, I put together a band with some really infamous musicians at the time. This was 1966 or 67. Yeah, 66. One was a guitar player named Terry Clements, who, when the band broke up, he became Gordon Lightfoot's guitarist for 35 years until he passed away recently.
Uh-huh.
Eddie Ho was the drummer. He was a famous drummer. He came to LA with the Modern Folk Quartet, which one of the people from that was Henry Diltz.
Right, great photographer.
And he was the drummer, and then he played with the Mamas and Papas, and then he played in my band. And Rick Day was the bass player, and he wrote the first hit for Paul Revere and the Raiders called Just Like Me. And Patty was the girl singer, and she's just an amazing voice. And Lou Adler signed us to Ode Records when he first started Ode Records, when it was still at CBS before he moved it over to A&M.
What was the name of your group?
It's called The Giant Sunflower.
Okay, great.
It's
very 60s.
Yeah. And then after that, one of my old friends from high school, who'd come out of a big band in the Bay Area called the Beau Brummels, Ron Elliott, who wrote all their hits, and a friend of mine, Keith Barber, who had a big hit in '69 called Echo Park. We decided to put a band together called Pan, and we went to Clive and played him about 6 songs, and he signed us that day.
Mm-hmm.
And we made a great album, and it came out, and the week it came out, he got fired.
Oh, God. That's
I don't know what happened in that world.
I've run into that where you're all ready to go, and all of a sudden the person who's making it happen within the record company is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, prior to both those bands, I was also a staff writer for April Blackwood and Warner Tamerlane, because I was a songwriter and an artist to begin with. So my beginning, and I played in a lot of bands, in the Bay Area before we moved down here, and it just sort of evolved.
Now, I'm trying to get the engineer part with that going on with that band, or did that you moved on to that?
I mean, every band that I was involved with and recorded with, I always had my hands in how it sounded and how it was arranged and all that stuff, because that just was me. But no, it wasn't until when I did the Pan record at the Sound Factory, Dave Hassinger was the engineer, and he and I became close friends. And at one point after the band broke up, he said to me, you know, why don't you come to work for me? You got a great pair of ears and I could teach you. And I said, wow, why not?
Yeah, why not exactly?
$100 a week, I started at the Sound Factory.
Yes.
The first project that I did was John Phillips and the Mamas and Papas.
As an engineer.
I was an assistant engineer to Dave Hassinger.
Yeah. That's a great start.
There's a credit, so.
Yeah, excellent. Is there, well, maybe we're going to hit a break pretty soon. In fact, we're going to hit it now, but I'll get back to my question after that. We're going to end the break with a song called Her Town 2, which is James Taylor and J.D. Souther and Waddy Wachtel, all of whom are still very active. And J.D. is a great, well, they're all great writers, but J.D. is he's not as well known as James Taylor, but man, has he written some good songs.
And I did his first solo record too, Black Rose.
He's great. And Waddy Wachtel I got to meet not too long ago. And what a guy. He's just the nicest guy.
He calls me Valerie and I call him Robert because that's his.
Oh, that's his real name.
Yeah. He said I'm only me and his mom call him Robert.
That's funny. All right, so we'll listen to that and slide into a commercial, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.